Latest news report is that the French have decided to violate Nigerian airspace. And what the Nigerian junta, the Nigerian government is accusing France of doing is flying this aircraft from Chad, which is a neighboring country to the east, and they went to the military, not the military bases basically, but they went to the mines where they had a lot of gold and a lot of uranium to chip out some of this uranium. And what they did also was to release tens of thousands of jihadis from prison. And we have been saying this all along that the French have an agenda in Africa, which is to destabilize Africa. And this is not the first time. On so many occasions, we have seen that the French are preventing the Nigerian army from going after the jihadists. Because if you look at the map, you see the enclave. It is around the border with Mali, between Mali and Burkina Faso and Niger. And that enclave, you have the Tubu people living there, you have the Tuareg people, these tribal people that have, nationalist agenda, and you also have other groups like Janim, Al-Morabitun on the Algerian border. You also have, Islamic State in the Greater Sahara. All these groups are being loaded with American and French weapons to destabilize Africa. And the reason for that, and if you look at the places that these groups are occupying, it is the areas around the uranium mines, the areas around the gold mines. So if you add 1 plus 1, it should tell you that the whole battle or the whole conflict, despite all what they say about the ideological motivations, they say jihadists, they say nationalists, everything is surrounded around resources and to protect the interests of these Western powers. Come to think of it, why is it that it is only in places where you have this uranium, where you have this gold, whether you have this californium? If you look at the map as well, the Nigerian problem with Boko Haram as well, if you look at the Lake Chad region, those places, those specific areas you're having conflict is because of abundance of resources in the Lake Chad area. Because it is a low area, it means that there's a lot of flow of resources. If you look at the geography of it, it's in a very low area, particularly the Lake Chad region. So all the water flowing from the River Niger, flowing from upstream, it will carry a lot of mineral deposits to that area. So over the years, there's an accumulation of wealth underneath the ground. So in places around Chad, Niger to the east, particularly around the Difa region, and Borno State in Nigeria, where you have a lot of these Kanuri people, that's where the jihadists are. And that is where some of the other groups are, with weapons that are French weapons, American weapons, loaded and supplied to them to destabilize the region. And they come later and say, oh, we want to fight jihadists, we want to fight the terrorists. And at the end of the day, you end up destabilizing the place. And the funny thing is that, despite the fact that these jihadists are there, you still have these Europeans going to those places. Places where the national army will not go to. You have them flying into those places and dropping things there and moving out. They go there under the cover of darkness, and that is why it is very important for them to have all these drone bases, all these military bases where they can easily enlist from and violate the airspace of countries. Because it is very clear the Nigerian government at this point in time has said clearly that we don't want anything to do with the French. But the French are still flying in and out of Niger, still loading out uranium and gold and bringing back weapons, and going to the extent of releasing jihadists from cells from Nigerian held prisons. Can you think of it for a second? These are Nigerian prisons where you have these jihadists being held under captivity, and the French have gone there and released them. Would you do that to Russia? And that is why they don't like Russia, because Russia is the only person that have exactly what they have, the weapons that they have, or better. It means that the aircrafts of France will not fly if you have Russian assets in Niger. They dread the Russians, they fear them, and the Russians can bleed them seriously. And they don't like that. They don't like the prospect. They can't stand it. They don't like the prospect of having to face Russia, because Russia can actually hit them where it hurts. I mean, everybody's running around and shouting about Wagner. What is Wagner? A group of 1,000 bandits and highly motivated fighters that need money. And everybody's running around. Why? Because they come in with hardware that can actually neutralize whatever the Americans and the Russians are. And the war in Ukraine has clearly exposed that all these white elephant Tomahawk cruise missiles, Panther tanks, the Leopard tanks, the Abrams tanks. Say, no, we are not going to give them the Abrams tanks because they will devastate the Russians. And most of those tanks did not even make it to the front line. They were destroyed by very cheap artillery weapons, blown up before they reached the battlefront. So all this is just it's just a facade, and it is time. The days are numbered. The French have to leave. And I want to also say this before I stop. The Nigerian government have to be very careful because the French have said basically that they did that in conjunction with the Nigerian army. And I know very well that Tinubu have now plunged himself into this. They can easily use his name to say, oh, it is not us, it is the Nigerians that gave us the license to go and interfere with Nigerian airspace. And that's exactly what they are doing now, because Tinubu foolishly have gone into something that he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand how international politics work. Would you like that to be done to Nigeria? A country, bleeding the country, they're making them, impoverishing them, and you are coming up to say, oh, you should allow them to continue to do that. So I don't really think the Nigerian government should get involved in this. And they should come out to make it very clear that they did not give the French any permission to invade a Nigerian airspace. What kind of nonsense is that?